If I told you that Rome's Stoic emperors, men who ruled vast empires, commanded armies, and shaped history, left behind timeless lessons for building and protecting wealth, would you believe me? These weren't just warriors or politicians. They were philosopher-kings whose ideas can still transform your financial life today. Now here's the twist. The same mindset that allowed Marcus Aurelius to maintain composure while governing millions can help you create lasting financial stability, even in the most chaotic economy. And one principle in particular, often overlooked, might be the key you've been missing. I'm Saul, and in this conversation, I'm going to take you inside the minds of Rome's Stoic emperors. Not as distant historical figures, but as mentors whose teachings can help you master money, power, and peace of mind. And I promise by the end, you'll see exactly how to apply their wisdom in a way that's practical and profitable today. Let's start with Marcus Aurelius himself, arguably the most famous Stoic emperor. While his empire stretched across continents, Marcus lived with a surprising financial philosophy. Wealth is a tool, not a master. In his personal writings, later published as Meditations, he reminded himself that very little is needed to live a happy life. Now that might sound like a recipe for poverty, but here's the secret. It's actually the ultimate strategy for wealth protection. Think about it. If you can train your mind to be content with less, you instantly become immune to the two forces that destroy most fortunes, greed and lifestyle inflation. Imagine if every time your income increased, you resisted the urge to inflate your expenses and instead invested the difference. Over time, that gap becomes your real empire. But Marcus's wealth wisdom didn't stop there. He understood that financial fortune is tied to emotional discipline. In fact, one of his core beliefs was to never let external events, whether victories or disasters, disturb his judgment. How often have we seen investors panic sell in a downturn only to regret it? Marcus would have done the opposite, remain calm, assess the facts, and act rationally, not reactively. Now here's where it gets interesting. Another Stoic emperor, Antoninus Pius, ruled before Marcus and left behind a very different, but equally powerful, wealth lesson: stability through consistency. Historical accounts describe Antoninus as methodical and measured, and avoiding risky reforms that could destabilize the empire. Applied to your finances, this is the principle of consistent, long-term growth over flashy, high-risk bets. But here's the question. How do you combine Marcus's emotional mastery with Antoninus's stability to actually grow wealth in the modern world? The answer lies in a third emperor, Hadrian. Hadrian was a builder, quite literally. He invested in long-term infrastructure, roads, aqueducts, fortifications, that paid dividends for centuries. For you, that translates into building financial assets that last, skills, relationships, investments that compound value over time. And here's the part most people miss. Hadrian didn't just build, he maintained. He inspected his works personally, ensuring they remained strong. This is a critical wealth lesson. Acquiring assets is only step one. Preserving and optimizing them is the real test of financial leadership. But let's loop back to Marcus for a moment, because there's one principle of his that might surprise you: preparing for loss. He frequently reminded himself that everything, wealth, status, possessions, is temporary. Now, at first glance, this seems pessimistic. But here's the twist. By accepting impermanence, you stop making desperate, fear-based decisions. Instead, you create robust plans that protect you from worst-case scenarios. And this is where modern finance and ancient philosophy meet. Think of emergency funds, insurance, and diversified investments as your Roman fortifications. You don't build them because you expect disaster every day. You build them so that if disaster comes, your empire stands. But there's still one unanswered question. How do you stay motivated to build wealth when the Stoics warn so often against attachment to it? This is where we unlock the final loop for today: purpose. For the Stoic emperors, wealth was never the end goal. It was the means to fulfill duty, whether that meant protecting their people, funding public works, or supporting philosophy and the arts. And here's where you can apply it directly. When your financial goals are tied to something bigger than just numbers, freedom for your family, the ability to contribute to causes you care about, the power to create and build, you naturally become more disciplined, resilient, and strategic. In a moment, I'm going to share the most counterintuitive wealth strategy drawn from the life of one Roman emperor, a principle that might completely reframe how you think about growth and security. And once you hear it, you'll see why it's as relevant in today's volatile markets as it was in the marble halls of ancient Rome. That emperor was Vespasian, the man who rose from a modest background to lead an empire and rebuild Rome's finances after years of turmoil. Vespasian understood something most modern entrepreneurs and investors overlook. Resourcefulness matters more than resources. When he took power, the imperial treasury was nearly empty. Instead of panicking or waiting for ideal conditions, Vespasian immediately identified overlooked revenue sources, cut unnecessary expenditures, and reinvested in projects that generated long-term stability. In today's terms, this is about leveraging what you already have, skills, networks, and existing assets, before chasing risky new ventures or debt-driven growth. One of his most famous decisions was introducing a tax on public urinals, which became so profitable that when criticized, he held up a coin and asked, "Does it smell?" It was a reminder that profitable opportunities aren't always glamorous. In your financial life, this might mean monetizing a skill you've taken for granted, repurposing unused resources, or entering markets your competitors ignore. But here's the Stoic twist. Vespasian didn't just look for income. He looked for income that aligned with stability and resilience. This is a critical point. Not all revenue is worth pursuing. If it undermines your values, creates excessive risk, or distracts you from your long-term mission, it's a trap disguised as an opportunity. Now let's circle back to Marcus Aurelius for a final synthesis of these lessons. He advised that wealth should never come at the cost of virtue, because money gained without integrity eventually costs you more than it gives. In practice, this means your investment and business decisions should be tested not only for profitability but for alignment with your core principles. So how do you take these emperor-tested strategies and apply them right now? You start by combining 4 pillars. First, Marcus's emotional discipline. Stay rational when others are driven by fear or greed. Second, Antoninus's consistency. Commit to steady, sustainable progress rather than gambling on rapid wins. Third, Hadrian's builder mindset. Focus on assets that last and maintain them diligently. Fourth, Vespasian's resourcefulness. Turn overlooked opportunities into reliable income streams. The real magic happens when you unite these principles under a clear purpose. That's the difference between wealth that flickers and wealth that endures. Because when your money serves a mission greater than itself, you protect it, grow it, and use it with intention. And here's something the Stoics understood that most modern advice misses. True financial freedom isn't about eliminating all problems. It's about becoming the kind of person who can handle them with composure and wisdom. An emperor's fortune could be threatened by war, disaster, or politics at any moment, yet the Stoic rulers kept their focus because they'd already mastered themselves. So ask yourself this: if tomorrow brought a market crash, a major expense, or a complete change in your circumstances, would you be ready? Not just financially, but mentally. The Stoic path to wealth demands that you prepare for both prosperity and adversity with the same calm readiness. Here's your challenge. Choose one of these imperial lessons and put it into practice this week. Maybe it's resisting an emotional financial decision. Maybe it's identifying a neglected income opportunity. Maybe it's starting a habit of regular maintenance for your assets. The point is to act, because as the emperors knew, wisdom unpracticed is wisdom wasted. Wealth lessons from Rome's Stoic emperors aren't dusty artifacts from a lost age. They're living strategies. Strategies that can fortify your finances, sharpen your decision-making, and most importantly, free you from the grip of fear and impulse. And if you start applying them today, you'll see that while empires may fall, the principles that built them can still build something lasting in your life.